I'd like to call to order the December 7th Plan Commission meeting. Could I get a roll call, please?
Yes. Dargis Johnson.
Here.
Aletsky.
Present.
Brink.
Here.
Culhane.
Here.
Hanson.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Case.
Here.
And Dolly and Spire are absent. We have a quorum. And so for the Board of Adjustment agenda today, we have 2 variance requests. And for a variance to be granted, we need 5 in the affirmative votes.
Thank you. Third item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Could I get a motion in a second?
Ford moves.
I'll second.
Motion and second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Fourth item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the October 5th, 2023 meeting. Could I get a motion in a second?
Ford moves. Second.
Motion and a second.
I thought that was September 21st meeting.
Are we doing Board of Adjustments or Plan Commission?
I'm sorry, I think I misspoke and said Plan Commission, but we're doing Board of Adjustment first, right? I'm sorry, my mistake, but yeah, we're 4A on the Board of Adjustment. We got a motion and a second. It's my bad. All in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
Opposed? Motion carries. 4B on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the October 19th meeting. Can I get a motion and a second?
So moved. Case.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Fifth item on the agenda is our regular agenda. 5A is board consideration of a variance request at 1015 16th Street Southwest. Brandy, would you take over, please?
Yes, thank you, Jeff. So as stated, this is a variance request for the property at 1015 16th Street Southwest. It is zoned I-1 Light Industrial District. I'll turn on the zoning adjacent zoning districts. So you have Highway 212 there to the north, and then with the commercial C3 zoning and surrounding this I-1 island is the R4 manufactured home, residential manufactured home district. So what the request is here, I'll pull back the agenda. So there's the existing building, and then there's a variance request for the proposed new construction to have a 10-foot rear yard setback, where in the I-1 district, there's the required 30-foot rear yard setback. And I think the main issue with the need for a reduced setback is for maneuvering larger equipment between the existing building and the proposed building. There is the building to the north here, and I have that in the background. The rear and side yard setback variance request was granted by the Board of Adjustment in 1997 to the lot immediately north of this property. So you can see when we look at the map here in proximity, you can see that this building is has a lesser setback as well, and that was granted through a variance in 1997. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions.
What is the setbacks for that, excuse me, the setbacks for the building to the north? Is that also 20 or 10 feet, or is it closer than 10 feet?
So they received a variance. Oh, actually, I think, wasn't it 6 feet? I have the permit in the file, but I can get that information.
So that what you're telling us is that building to the north is actually closer to their property line than this applicant is requesting.
Yes.
This is a public hearing. I will open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone who wishes in favor or against this to please approach the mic and state your name for the record.
So the variance was for the 10 feet. Was our building official, did you, end up having any visuals when you went out to the site? Yeah. Okay. We have the confirmation that the building, so the building permit was issued for it to have a 10-foot rear yard setback, but our building official, Reed Peterson, just confirmed that the building was closer to the property line than 10 feet,
Hey, Brandy, what's the required side yard setback?
20 feet.
20 feet? Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Hi, I'm James Olson. Referencing the vicinity map that was sent to me, I'm the owner of 1026 16th Street Southwest. Actually, it's indicated with a green dot on the map that was sent me. It's a storage facility. It's actually held in the James and Julie Olson Family Trust. My concerns are additional flooding that will be caused on my property. I've owned that property since 2009, and only after adjoining lots have raised their elevation by adding about 4 feet of fill dirt and the street project on 11th Avenue was completed in 2008. After those were completed, every 2-inch rain, I get flash flood in my storage facility. I received notification of this variance, and I visited the city hall on Tuesday, not being familiar with the meetings and asking what was proceeding. And I did ask if a permit was required to bring fill dirt into the Susie lot, and they said it was. I asked if the permit had been completed, and they indicated that it had not, as a building permit has not been issued. Based on my questions, they asked me if I knew how much dirt would be there, and I indicated that the lot was already been filled with about 3 to 4 feet of dirt on the west side, and that the footings for the building were in place already. My concern is more about the dirt versus the location of the building. On the map, I will reference the Leno property, which would be directly west of my property. And I also will reference the Ronke property, would be the second property west of mine, which has a storage facility and camper storage on it. The lowest elevation in this area of town is the lot directly west of mine, owned by Leno. There appears to be only one storm sewer on any street covering this 6 blocks in this area south of Highway 212. It's located at the property line between my property and Leno's on 11th Avenue Southwest. My estimate is that at least 13 city blocks drain towards this storm sewer. The other groundwater in the area drains to the Leno lot. In fact, the city has designed the water to go there, as there is an easement to the city for drainage on the north side of the Susie property, and also a dip in 16th Street Southwest to enable all the groundwater from the trailer courts east of 16th Street Southwest to drain down this easement and end up on the Leno lot. The Leno lot typically has standing water. For all practical purposes, hope you were hearing me. For all practical purposes, the Leno lot is serving as a permanent retention area for groundwater, and the surrounding lots serve as temporary retention areas for groundwater, directed there by the city, and of course, the elevation of the land. And of course, when I say temporary retention, that's when my facility does flood. As you continue to approve the adjoining lots to be able to bring fill in up to the required level for them to build, you're lowering the capacity of the retention area, and this has been pushing the water onto my property. Also, the storm sewer from the city street is draining back onto my property instead of going south to the lake. With no other changes, if you would ever approve the fill dirt be placed on the Leno lot, the one directly west, not in question today, my and other storage units would be in standing water at least 75% of the time. I'm concerned that the water from the storm sewer on the 11th Avenue Southwest that ends up flowing onto our property goes north of the street instead of south of the lake like it should. Again, that storm sewer and the culvert that maintain that are on the property line between my property and the Leno property. The culvert that the storm sewer dumps into is not being maintained. This is the culvert that the city dumps the storm sewer water into. At this time, the open end of the culvert in the south is in the south ditch of 12th Avenue Southwest. So that'd be, at least 2 blocks south. And it is open, but basically it's in a hole where the ground level is about 10 inches above the surrounding ground level. In fact, I believe Justin Peterson was out and looked at that today, assistant city engineer. Previously, the city has indicated the culvert is privately owned, so they can't maintain it. I don't understand why the city is putting the storm sewer water into a privately owned culvert, because that's what they're using. The last few items I have here is that previous correspondence regarding this matter, I've made her to Councilman Don Roby back in June 19, 2018. I brought it to his attention before the 11th Avenue Southeast Watertown reconstruction project of that street was completed, because at that time the culvert was blocked, not being maintained. There was already a storm sewer there, but you can be agreed, you did a good job in the reconstruction, because now even more water comes to my storm sewer, as it should, than it did before. And also, back in 2000, the Ronke property, which is 2 west of mine, correspondence with city engineer Tom Drake in 2012. He indicated that they would require Mr. Ronke to pitch his lot to the street to avoid adding to our problem, because we were concerned about the fill that it was put in there. There was 4 foot of fill put into that property, again, reducing the retention area for water. And actually with the result of that is the storm sewer, with the storm sewer issues and the culvert being partially blocked, it's actually just going out to the street, coming down the street, and then coming back on to my property. Those are my concerns.
Thank you. Thank you for those. I might defer to Brandy or Heath if they wouldn't mind filling us in on the process for getting a fill permit. Because right now, today, we're here discussing whether a variance to a building setback should be allowed. And I know they'll want to bring in fill to put the building in, but even if they didn't put the building in, could they still bring in fill or bring in fill for a building that was compliant to the setbacks? So.
Yes, they could. We would look at the site grading and drainage at the time of building permit application, as well as the grading permit application. And this is something that Justin Peterson, city engineer, may be able to speak to as far as when we were reviewing the grading permit that was submitted for this property and how the current drainage is in this area, that he did not see issue with what was being proposed, because overall, the drainage, there are drainage issues in this area. And when 11th Avenue Southwest was reconstructed, these are drop inlets here, so it does outlet the water within the right-of-way. And currently, this is a low-lying area, and actually it's shown on the U.S. Army Corps inventory that it's a jurisdictional wetland. But if that were ever to be developed, we would need confirmation from the Corps, because their determinations have changed recently, so we would want an updated determination on that.
Thank you. So yeah, looking at their site plan, it looks like their property, it has elevations on it. It currently has a little over 1 foot of fall heading from the east to the west side. So it looks like this property does drain towards that open lot, the Olson lot, I believe he said. And that's proposed to remain the same with this construction, if I'm reading that correctly?
I guess I would point out that, the fill has just been done recently. There's been 4 feet of fill already just recently placed on the property, so it wasn't that way a month ago, 2 months ago.
Mr. Olson, when the water comes onto your property, from what direction is the water coming onto your property? Is it coming from the south to the north? Is it coming from the east, wrapping around back to on the west side? Or how would you characterize that?
Well, at this time, I think most of the water is coming from the north. It's coming from the trailer house court across 16th Street where there's a dip going across the easement on the north end of Susie's property and then into the lot adjoining me. I am also proposing that the city's storm sewer water is running onto my property to the north. It's running north when it should be going south. The culvert is open-ended on the north side of 11th Avenue Southwest. So there's an open-end culvert that the storm sewer dumps into about, 4 or 5 feet after it goes south. And if the culvert's plugged, all that storm sewer water comes back from the south onto my property. It's a low property. If there's a 6-inch rain, I expect to have a flash flood, but I've owned it since 2009, and the dirt is my concern. It's only since the dirt and that I've had the issue with a 2-inch rain having flooding.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Olson from the board? If not, I'll ask if there's anyone else from the public that wishes to speak in favor or against this item.
Thank you.
Brandy, there's curb and gutter, correct, since we improved 11th and 16th then?
Yes.
Thank you.
I've been mentioned several times, so I kind of put my 2 cents in. My name is Russ Ronke, and I have the property there. I had to raise my property to the flood, the flood, 1 foot over the flood, base flood. And so that's why we did that. We went ahead, got everything we done. I don't think where the water's coming for these people that are about 5 feet under the base datum. That's not my problem, and when they bought the property, they should have seen that it's pretty low there. Since we've done this and went through it, and I apologize and didn't bring the pictures, every time we've had rain, and even the period where we had several inches in a week, there's been no water on that property. So what he's doing is sometimes, yes, he may have water, but they have their 2 roofs going, all the water's going right in front of that real low property. It's not coming from Joss's, it's not coming from my property. That is a wetland. It does get wet when it does rain, but as you can see, the low part of the darker part right in through there, that stays dry even when it gets flooded. So I mean, I'm sorry that I didn't help you with the pictures that I've sent or taken and I have at home. I should have brought them, but I didn't, because I knew there was going to be some questions of the people that have that property. And they're, like he said, they are low, they are very low. I don't know how they got built back when they did, because, I mean, they're way lower than any property should be built in this area. Questions? Because we've went, and I'm sure Josh has, there's some flood, and that's a floodplain.
That's the wetland designation there. And then the floodplain is the reddish pink.
Yep. And see,
Boundary.
these, the property that goes on to the mobile home court, there's nothing built there. I think that's the reason why, because they were in the floodplain.
Thank you.
You bet.
So Brandy, looking at your map, you have the wetlands was the dark, or the blob. The pink is the 100-year flood zone, or the 1% flood zone. Then the green lines, is that our existing storm sewer? And then that blue line's a private storm sewer?
Yes. What's up?
Green's wastewater?
Brandy, I'm sorry.
Yep, thank you.
The green, yes.
Mr. Chair?
Thank you.
So being that the property is in the 100-year floodplain, do we know how much fill they're going to have to bring in to elevate that structure?
So their current elevation, as far as the site plan, the base flood elevation is 17.5 in this area. And you can see currently, it is like, the existing building sits at 17.5, so about a foot.
So they're going to need to raise about a foot of fill of or what they're using right now.
Yep, of where the existing ground is.
All right, thank you.
We all good?
Yep.
Okay. I am not nearly as prepared or documented as he was. My name is Christian Westlow. Own lots 9 and 10, which are directly north of the buildings that he just referenced. So lots 9 and 10 would be the bigger stretch right there. And my concern is not necessarily the location or the closeness of to the back of the lot, but all of the drainage that will come from any amount of rainfall. And I don't want to argue with Mr. Ronke, but we are wet all the time. So 2-inch rains get all the way up to the north and get into our units as well. It's not just storage for me. My father and I have owned this.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Could you give us an address so we know specifically?
I wish I could.
which-
I have it
Brandy,
highlighted
can
here.
you?
Yeah.
I have it highlighted in blue, I believe.
Right there. Okay, thank you.
And I've never known the address to me. It's always units 9 and 10, and it's where my dad and I have our wood shop. So we have a lot of expensive equipment in there. My concern is with building more, we've done a lot to work with the drainage to keep the water from getting in the front of the shop, but with this much of a development and concrete going in directly behind, my concern is now we're going to get hit from the north as well. We are consistently wet. Had I known that this was this wet when we bought it in 2011, we wouldn't have bought it. But ever since the property has been put into the west, the Ronke property, we have seen more water ingress to our property. Any questions for me? Thank you.
Oh, wait, I have a question, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
When you say you are wet, what specifically does that mean?
So the floor is always damp, and usually there is water that gets into the shop, and any amount of rainfall, anything over 1.5 inches, depending upon how fast it comes down. If it's a slow rain, we're usually pretty good, but we've got everything up. Again, it's a wood shop, so I have a lot of different tools, wood, but we had to change the way we store everything. Everything has to be elevated and maintained, and we keep fans going at all times to try to dry it out when it does get wet.
Do your buildings have rain gutter on front and back?
Yes. And we have steel roof on that portion, so. Front, not back. Front, not back. I don't think there's a back gutter.
But there could be.
There could be. I haven't looked at that. Yeah. In fairness, I bought the shop from my father less than a year ago, but we've owned it together since then, so.
Where does the rain gutter drop at? I'm assuming west end.
Yep,
Is that where you send
correct.
it?
Yep.
Okay. Does it just head to that bare field?
Depending upon, it doesn't slope really well there. The bigger issue is literally that culvert that was referenced by, I'm sorry, the previous gentleman. We've done a lot of work trying to dig trenches in and try to slope that. We've done a lot of digging. Every spring, we go and dig things out of the culvert. My dad had worked with the city a lot to talk about these problems and concerns, and we didn't see a lot of action taken.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Is the applicant here?
Could I just give one point of clarification? As far as what we're here for with the variance for the setback in the rear yard, understanding that drainage is a large issue in this area, but also keep in mind that any new development does need to be raised so that it is 1 foot above the base flood elevation because it is in the floodplain. So I'm not certain when the storage units there to the south were constructed, but presumably prior to 2009, when our latest floodplain maps were adopted. That's it.
Good evening. Could you just explain in your own words why you need the variance, why you're requesting the variance?
I'm Josh Susi, and I guess I'm looking for the variance, kind of as Brandy was stating there. The further you keep pushing that front building back to the building that I have currently, it makes it a lot more challenging to get any vehicles or whatever in there to try to utilize that building to the best that we can. And I'd like to keep it so we can keep some of this miscellaneous stuff that is outside there, so we can keep that inside, so we can keep it better longer.
Are you planning to have rain gutters on the back of your building so you can direct your water away instead of just dumping off? It'll go.
Yes, we normally would have rain gutters on front and back there that we would divert that water.
And there is a drainage easement on the north side of his property, so he will have to direct the water to the north and then naturally where it's been going to the west.
How did it come about that the footings are in and the dirt was brought in without permits?
How did it come about?
Right.
We had extra fill from previous projects or whatever that we were looking just to utilize there instead of paying to have it taken away.
And what about the footings in the beginning of the structure?
That was more of a calculated, it was a risk on my part, and because of doing that. For the time frame of what day it is today or whatever, and timing to going forward, that if we were going to have to thaw all of this ground out and do that, we would have exorbitant amount of additional costs trying to bring that dirt back to where we could utilize it.
But you do understand there are ordinances and permits that are required before you do any of that.
Correct, yep, and we've already established and gone over this with the city here.
Are there penalties for starting construction without a building permit, administrative fees, or how does that work at the city?
Yes, so at the time that a building permit would be applied for, it would be double the permit fee. And then ultimately, the risk is that if the building permit is not granted, then he does have those, because it still could be filled and used as a parking structure. It just wouldn't be a building, like a parking lot of some sort, but that would just be raised higher. So, but that is
Has the city considered charging administrative fees for variances and conditional use permit requests for individuals that start construction prior to getting the necessary variance? I know they do in Cottington County, for example. It's double the fee for the variance for after the fact as well. Have we done that, or have we thought about doing that here?
So we haven't, but the thing about So Josh applied for the variance on, what day, November, Jana might be able to pull this up, November 2nd. And then we didn't have a meeting over Thanksgiving, so it did push him, where typically, so he did apply for the variance before work had commenced. And of course, the city did not condone that. We were in contact with him once we learned about it. And then he did submit a grading permit. So, and then still going forward, that fee will be doubled once the permit would be issued.
Has the grading permit been issued?
No.
Is there a fee for the grading permit as well as the building permit?
There is not, but usually the grading permit would be in conjunction with the building permit. So either or, if it's just the grading permit that gets approved, or if it just gets tied into the building permit, they will be double the fee. The grading permit has the $50 fee. The building permit is based on the total valuation of the project. And I don't know if Heath wanted to touch on, on your first question, we haven't looked into doubling the fee for variances or conditional use requests that have commenced, but it's not a bad thought.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, I think you answered the question, Brandy, in my mind, because he is incurring a double the permit fee by acting on construction. So whether there's a variance applied for or not, he still proceeded without having a permit in hand, and he's still going to get hit with double the permit fee. So to your point, Commissioner Case, I think that we're essentially doing that by the rule that's in place, if I'm understanding your.
Yeah, I was just thinking something to consider moving forward as fees are developed on an annual basis that the city council might want to consider. Also making all fees associated with construction that aren't granted prior to starting it. It becomes punitive, but sometimes, well, if it's $150 for a variance, I'll come in after the fact and ask for forgiveness as opposed to permission. And so from that perspective, maybe you make that a little bit more painful. There's no guarantee that they're going to get it, obviously, but I know that's an approach that many other communities and counties take. And I'm not throwing Mr. Susi under the bus, I'm just saying it for anybody. Something to consider. Not using it as, it's not a revenue, maker, but it's more of something that we're serious about our regulations.
I do like that idea, because then it takes more consideration as to somebody deciding to do a calculated risk.
Anyway, but I guess I didn't mean to take us down that rabbit hole, but it's just something to be considering. I want to get back to the request at hand. I can see that more than likely that we are not going to see the propensity for development to the west on this property, that the Leno property, is that correct? Due to the fact of the floodplain there, and it's just the natural drainage. I just really don't know if you'd ever see anything happening there, which would maybe make the variance request a little bit more amenable, knowing that you're not going to possibly be encroaching upon subsequent structures to the west and having adequate spacing. That would be the only thing that would even lend me any pause to consider the variance. Thank you.
Just quickly, it is a wet area. It's a wet area because all the groundwater from that area, even as directed by the easements from the city, are directed to that area. We are wet. I'm more interested in the city taking care of that culvert than stopping Josh from being able to get his building up. I'm more interested in the city taking responsibility for a culvert they don't own, that they're putting stormwater water into, and it's going back on our properties. If it was properly engineered, it'd be going to the south of the lake, and we all, including Josh, would have a better property.
Yeah, thank you. There's someone online that wishes to speak in favor or against this item? Maybe not. Is there anyone else in the audience that wishes to speak in favor or against this item?
Eight oh two 7035. Were you wanting to speak? Well, we just had, I think, allowed them on, and so they might just not have muted yet, but I just saw it blinking, and I wanted to make, skipping someone.
Well, seeing no one else, I will close the public hearing. This is kind of a very unique, interesting situation we have here. I mean, the proposed building itself, could fit on the lot, but then there might not have turning movements, but if this building were proposed 20 feet farther east, it would have just been approved administratively and it would have never came before us. So knowing that the building, if it could have been approved, could have been built up and built, without us, just, could have been built either way.
Mr. Chair, I don't think the drainage is the issue at the point of this. I mean, he'd have to, have the ability to raise the property to construct per code. The question is whether or not 10 foot is an adequate setback from that space.
Yep, that's what I was trying to say. You said it better. Thank you. I will ask for a motion and a second from the board.
I'll make a motion to approve for discussion purposes.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
I have a question, Mr. Chair. On the site plan with elevations, Brandy,
Yep.
it has two dates. The larger date in the bottom left says November 2023, and on the bottom right, it says project number and date, and it looks like 2022.
So that is their internal project number.
It's the date I'm wondering about, the 2022. When were these elevations taken? Do they include the fill that he illegally put in there? Or are these elevations before he put the fill in that are on this sheet?
Typically, we see a site plan that is prior to the fill being placed. So we're looking and reviewing a site plan to make sure that what they're proposing is going to be sufficient before they put the fill in place.
So these elevations on the proposed building aren't correct? This 17.1 in the bottom left corner?
I'll maybe have Josh speak to this. If you could explain it.
I mean,
like just-
that's what you were talking about, Jeff, right? That the drainage, and I'm just curious to know if we're looking at
The way I
real information, if it's updated to present time.
The way I'm looking at it, though, the black dot elevations are listed as existing drainage, and then the proposed is, it's labeled as proposed. So when I saw that 17.1, I assumed that was the existing.
But we don't really know.
And the
So,
proposed in that
That
building
is usually what a site plan shows, which is what I explained, but I just wanted Josh's confirmation just with the,
sure.
I have a question, Mr. Chair. So to be out of the flood elevation, the 100-year flood, he has to be at 18.5?
Yeah, it has to be 1 foot above, so the site elevation, Brandy said, was 17.5, and that's why the proposed elevation is 17.5.
Okay, thank you.
Base flood elevation is 1717 even. My building is 1717.5, 5 inches out, or half a foot out.
18.5.
What's that? The new building,
Yeah.
1718.5, but my existing one is 1717.5.
Which whenever that building was constructed, if there was the 1 foot freeboard today, with the base flood elevation being 1717, the new building has to be at least 1718, but he is proposing for it to be 1718.5.
Are you backing in like great big semi-trailers or just your basic trailer or what?
Both.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion, or I'll ask for a?
I have one more question, and I have no idea how you could answer it, but we have several engineers here. So if the variance 10 feet or 20 feet or 30 feet, the setback, how does the difference between those numbers, how possibly could it affect the drainage onto this other property, specifically the wood shop and that property? If you had a 30-foot rear setback, would that mean there'd be less drainage because there's more land there? I don't know. And would you have to fill, let's say you have a 30-foot setback, you would only fill where that building is, but you wouldn't fill up to the property line? Or would you fill up to the property line also? Or would it slope down? So at the end of the property line, it would still be the elevation that it is now?
Do you want to?
Certainly. Commissioner Ford, thank you for that question. The limited space in that back lot, the rear yard setback, obviously, anytime you reduce that area, you're going to reduce the amount of area that you've got to convey runoff. I don't know without knowing more hydraulic details of this site to know whether a 10-foot area is adequate to convey whatever runoff will be directed to that space. It could be possible to still convey runoff through there. But to your point, 30 feet accomplishes it all the more easily.
However, Mr. Chair, if a condition was placed on the variance to put gutters on the facility to make sure that all the water coming off the roof runs to the north and follows the existing drainage easement, it wouldn't even go down that 10 or 20 or 30-foot path anyhow, correct?
Correct. You'd be drastically minimizing the amount of runoff that would be going into that 10-foot setback area.
Right.
I have a question. Now, is this 10 foot, does that include the overhang or is that 10 foot from the wall?
The wall.
How long is that overhang going to be? 4 feet?
They can be up to 2 feet.
So he's going to be within 8 feet, really, with the runoff and everything?
And, yeah, which I think is why they're proposing the gutters to redirect it.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to amend my previous motion to approve with the requirement that the gutters have to be on the building and the water has to run to the north.
I have an amended motion. Do I have an amended second?
Yes.
I have a question about that, Todd. How do you make a motion that says the water has to run to the north?
The design of the building would require that gutters be in place with the grade or the slope of the gutter to move the water north coming off of the roof.
So if we have an 8-inch rainfall in an hour, it's not going to run to the north. I think that's an unreasonably enforceable.
Yeah, I understand. I'm just saying that if they grant the variance, I'm just saying I want to make sure as much of the water, most of the time is going to run to the north.
Well, perhaps you can accomplish that by just putting gutters on the building and not saying, we're saying the water must run. I mean, we want the water to run.
The gutters will be placed on the building in such a fashion that any water coming off, in most instances, will run to the north. How's that for watered down?
I just am not in favor of making a stipulation that
Well, the stipulation's really easy. I mean, if I'm on the south side of the building and the gutter is going downhill to the north, the water will run that direction. Maybe not at certain volumes, but
Right.
it will go off. So I think that's what I'm saying. The design of the building has to accommodate water runoff to the north.
Okay.
And that would already be a general requirement. It's great that it's included as a condition, but just because of where the drainage easement is located.
So maybe, we get really down a rabbit hole, as Todd says. What about requiring drainage along his whole south lot between the two, that he has to
Berm it, you're thinking?
perhaps, or a concrete belly that the water can flow to that holding pond lot? That
I
would-
guess the question, my only issue with that is that so far, there's been no scientific information provided that the roof of this building is going to generate any more water than the current condition today.
I understand that, but he's asking for us to set it back in, onto the setbacks. So if we alleviate the water that's already existing, even if there was no other building going up, even if there were a trench or a belly, that the water between the two properties on his property would help with any water that sits, gets pushed up against the other one that is too low. We all know it's built in a flood zone, so I'm
Mr.
just
Chair,
saying, we're in,
to help move this thing along, I will help Commissioner Dargis draft a substitute motion that includes the previous, to address specifically the requirement of berming on the south side, to see if that's even something that the board wants to deal with. And then if that fails, it comes back to the original motion. If there's a second, I'm making a motion to require berming on the south side.
berming or gutter.
Something that's
Okay.
going to retain the water.
I'm just throwing it out there. I'll second yours.
Okay.
So the motion,
So there's a motion and a substitute.
yeah, we motion a second, it's a substitute, it's not a substitute motion, it's just a motion to amend the previous motion, so we're voting on the amendment.
Okay, so the first, okay. All right, with that, let's do a roll call vote on the amendment to require some sort of drainage, berm, or gutter valley system on the south side.
Okay. Case?
No,
Ford?
Yes.
Hanson? No. Coleen?
No.
Brink?
No.
Letsky?
Yes.
Darius Johnson?
Yes.
4-3, that fails. So now we have the motion, which is the variance with the condition of the gutters. We already have a motion and a second. I'll ask for a roll call vote on that, please.
Can I, who seconded that one?
I did.
Okay, perfect. Yes, Dargis Johnson,
No.
Aletsky,
This is to require the rain gutters?
this is to approve the variance with the rain gutters.
Yes.
and that the water be graded to the north. Or,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes,
And the grade would be routing the water to the north.
got it.
Okay, all right. Aletsky,
Yes.
okay. Brink,
Yes.
Coleen,
Yes.
Hanson, Ford,
No.
Case.
Yes.
Motion 4-3, that's a pass, right?
Fails.
No. You
Fails,
need-
fails, we need 5.
You need
right?
5.
Yep. 4-3, motion fails. Moving on the agenda is item 5B, board consideration of variance request at 121 Airport Drive. Randy, will you take over, please?
Yes, let me get down there. Okay, so this. If I can find my right page. I was taking notes on the wrong item. Okay, so this is a variance request for the property located at 121 Airport Drive for let me get down there, for a front yard setback on the existing building. Okay, let me just restart this here. Sorry, you guys were talking. Okay, so this is Worth Electronics here at 121 Airport Drive. And the existing building has a 25-foot front yard setback. The request is for an addition to also continue that 25-foot front yard setback in the I-1 Light Industrial District. In the I-1 district, the front yard setback requirement is 40 feet. So, and they are asking to continue the 25-foot front yard setback. And this is the proposed addition. So you can see where the existing building sits today and then where the addition will be extending 96 more feet to the north. I think that's all that I have. Oh, so there was a variance granted in 1993 originally for the 25-foot front yard setback. And then there was a variance granted in 1994 for a side yard setback on the west property boundary here. So with that, I'll stand by for any questions.
All right, thank you, Brandy.
Mr. Chair, where was the variance requested that was granted in 93, was for what's?
For this front yard setback here, right here.
What was the variance allowed to go within 25 feet?
Yep, for the front yard setback to be 25 feet.
Okay.
Brandy, when they, if they construct an addition to this building, I saw in their drawing they had a lot of landscaping in their parking lot. Will that be required with any type of building permit? They had the,
So only in the Gateway Overlay District do we have the exterior parking lot requirements. They would not be required, they would be required to have sufficient parking spaces for their building use. But we don't have the additional landscape requirement for parking lots outside of the Gateway Overlay District.
shoot, I thought that was the case, but I saw the green space and hopefully they'll still incorporate them either way, but.
It's definitely nice. And it adds that function of where they're trying to convey traffic too, so.
Right.
Oh, Mr. Chair, are they going to have plenty of parking? Are they going to add on to their parking?
When we review it for a building permit, we will verify that, but they are aware of what would be required in our ordinance. And then also, if this is not sufficient, they do have additional space that they could add. But just by the looks of it, it looks like it looks sufficient.
Mr. Chair, one quick question. What is the height, or how many stories are in the existing building?
It's 2-story currently. One, okay. And yeah, and actually for these questions, if you guys want to open the public hearing and then the architect on the project could answer
I'll open the public
some of
hearing.
these more detailed questions.
Hello, I'm Jason Can with Co-op Architecture. We're the architecture firm for this project. I guess just a very quick sort of overview. Obviously, the existing building is there, and as Brandy mentioned, that very kind of southeast piece is a one-story addition that was done in 1993. The facility, to meet their current needs, currently the Worth is actually separated into 2 buildings. They've had to move some people off-site with some growth and that sort of stuff. So they're trying to get everybody back onto one site, have a connected campus, all that sort of stuff, and to create the space that they need for the project, while still allowing the parking needs that we have for the project, the truck access. There's some loading docks in the middle of this, and there's trucks access and turning radiuses that need to sort of be maintained in that parking lot to allow that operations to continue as they work there. It makes sense to put the building basically where the existing building sits in that variance space. So that is a 1-story space right now, and our intent is actually to build a 3-story building there and extend it another 95 feet or whatever that is to the north. So it'll actually be a 3-story building kind of all along there with a really nice facade that sort of presents nicely along Airport Drive there. And, you know, essentially kind of serves as a side yard. There's no parking or anything like that. That will all be green space on that side as we direct everyone in that first driveway into the main parking area.
No, you submitted the entire concept. You want to show the facade?
Oh, we can?
Okay, I have it.
Yeah, so this is the concept for the building here. You can see there's actually a portion of it that is one story with a rooftop terrace across, along Airport Avenue there, with the rest of the building being a 3-story building kind of all along there. So, you know, the intent of the project is really to, you know, create honestly, a sort of a world-class headquarters facility for Worth Electronics here in Watertown to help draw in, you know, more talented employees, kind of retain employees, kind of create, you know, a place that helps draw in corporate partners and all that sort of stuff. So it'll be a really, really nice addition to the, you know, the airport industrial park out there and to the community of Watertown in general. And in terms of the green space and that sort of stuff, the intent of this project is actually to try to achieve LEED Silver certification. Green space requirements and things like that we're pursuing as far as that certification. So there will be green space and things like that sort of incorporated into the parking area and around the structure and all that sort of stuff to meet some of those requirements for LEED certification. Which I don't know if this is 100% fact, but I think this would probably be the first LEED certified building in Watertown. I'm not positive on that, but I would guess that.
Mr. Chair? It's an amazing project, of course, and I'm a pretty black and white person, as you can see what I'm wearing. I'm trying to find some gray, and the variance, our direction is granted only where special circumstances or conditions such as exceptional narrowness, topography, or sighting. Also, there has to be, mere loss in value shall not justify a variance. There must be a deprivation of beneficial use of the land. And you got a lot of land there. So could you speak to those? And I see your hardship also, I'll just throw this in, is allows the owner to maintain operations. The electrical transformer can stay, but that's really not part of the 5 criteria for considering a zoning, a variance. So I would appreciate some info on that.
Sure. You know, the biggest piece is their, you know, for their growth and what they're trying to incorporate on the site, the parking space, we're trying to maintain the parking lot, and that was sort of recently redone. And how it works right now, there is, you know, to maintain, we're going to have a little over 200 parking spaces on the site. And to maintain the space that they have for that, and then to maintain the truck access and the turning radius for the approach at the center of the building for the loading docks and things like that, we need to sort of maintain that big mass of parking spaces while also maintaining our, you know, parking up along the building for access and accessibility and all those sorts of things. So by pushing it back, we start to infringe on where the loading dock is, how we can turn around on the site with those trucks while the parking lot is full and all that sort of stuff.
And how about all the green grass to the north of the parking lot?
There is green space there, and that is part of the site. They're currently planning on, one, that's where all the drainage and all the snow gets pushed and all that sort of stuff to clean out the parking lot, and everything sort of runs that way. We're trying to not, as part of the project, add extra parking there. And there's actually requirements, if we do pursue the LEED Silver certification, that we maintain basically a minimum number of parking right at the number that is required by the authority having jurisdiction here. So we're not trying to grow that asphalt parking or concrete parking space anymore, so we can meet those requirements to get that certification. And by pushing out there, we would then start having to do construction in that area, which we're trying to stay out of. Another, part, and, I know this is the building location right now, obviously they utilize all of their space and there's lab space and, sort of stuff in there that can't really move. So right now where the building is located, where the existing building sits. And so the intent is that we're sitting on the existing foundation wall. That's where the building is right now. And we're just sort of extending it a little bit further. If we push that back, it causes sort of a whole ripple on how if they can operate on the site, if they can maintain operations here while we're trying to do construction and that sort of stuff, which, kind of throws in a wrench in whether it's a feasible project or not.
Mr. Chair? Forgive me, I must have just got lost in the whole picture. So basically, we're not building any closer to the road right now. We're just extending that line further to the, whatever direction that is,
Northeast, yeah.
northeast, right?
Correct.
So at some point in time, the city was fine with a portion of that building being that close to the road, and now we're only adding how much more in addition, how much is that addition going to the northeast? Is it 100 feet, is it 200 feet?
A little bit under 100 feet.
And
Yep.
what's the existing spot, right, what do we got there right now?
180, I think.
So we're about a 40% increase along that stretch of the road, which the city was fine in 1993.
Correct.
Thank you.
The public hearing is open. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak in favor or against this item?
One other thing to keep in mind is that there's 87 foot of right-of-way, which typically a local street like this would have 66 foot. So there is additional,
Spaces.
yeah.
Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion and a second from the board.
Move to approve the variance request.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to incorporate the finding that in this situation, what's unique about this property is an overly large right-of-way abutting it, previous actions by the city in the past, and an expansion of a use that's less than, I'm going to do the rough math, and about 40% of what's already there. So it's a minimal ask. That would be my basis for voting yes if we get that far.
Any other comments?
Brandy, do you know when the initial construction of this building started?
The
Yeah, I
original
know.
building was in the 1970s, the original warehouse building. The addition on the front was in 1993. And then, this one the intent is to start this spring or early summer if we can.
And I just wanted to confirm, since we were using that as a finding as far as the right-of-way, sometimes GIS isn't the most accurate, but it actually shows that it's a platted 100-foot right-of-way in that area. So definitely more right-of-way than it would be today if it were being platted.
That street is narrow, correct? I
But
mean,
the-
the actual road, how wide is the actual road itself, the hard surface?
It is narrow, but the right-of-way is still,
Okay, but necessarily a semi that slides off the road isn't going to care what the right-of-way is. My concern is a little bit with that being all office, and whether it was, office people or manufacturing people, that doesn't, What I mean is that we are adding quite a bit of exposure that close to where a lot of semis go, and we do, have ice. And we have 3 stories now of, I'm just throwing that out there as a concern that I see. I'm not saying that I'm going to vote against it, I'm just saying that we're raising a wall 3 feet, and then, like I said, a semi, it could hit it now, and it hasn't hit it in the last 30 years. So I get it. I'm just throwing it out there.
so with the street, just from this measurement, is approximately 36 feet, and that might be, 36 to 38 feet. So with the right-of-way, then where the property line starts, it is still 32 feet back off of the street. And typically you have 14 feet, if that, with the street width. And then with the right-of-way, for a street like this, be required to be 41 feet wide and 66 foot of right-of-way, which then on each side gives you 14 feet for the boulevard. And then with your additional setback. So this one, actually, there is more space within the right-of-way.
Right, but to Commissioner Ford's point, there is land here that they could still maintain their certification, which I get. I mean, you'd be tight, but I think, and again, I have no idea what your certification numbers are. I just struggle when we own that much land that we are giving variances because it's easier. It'd be easier if we didn't have to hard surface anything and all that good jazz. Life would be easy. But, so those are my hangups. Thanks.
Mr. Chair, I agree with that, which is my concern also. There's a lot of land here. And one of the criteria of the variance is that there must be a deprivation of beneficial use of land. And I'm struggling with that. It's not that I don't want this to happen, but I look upon it as future people coming and saying, well, you did it for them, or a reference to what happened with this variance, and I expect the same treatment. It's a very difficult decision when it's an amazingly important facility to this town. I guess I'm wondering what would happen if you moved this new building to the west.
Make more comments? Okay. So if we move it to the west, we run into issues with how we're bringing in delivery, how they operate, how they currently operate as far as truck access and deliveries and that sort of stuff, and being able to use that center portion. We don't, for operational, how they operate, they don't want the building separated, because it is something we sort of looked at previously, if we can actually put a building over there. But that needs to stay attached in some fashion. So if we push it back, it causes issues with the warehouse, how that actually operates, how their loading docks work, how the trucks access works, all that sort of stuff. And if we push it much further to the, towards the northeast, kind of make it longer, we end up losing the slope that we need to kind of maintain access, just ramp access from an ADA standpoint out front, because it actually starts to drop off a decent bit there and maintain the connectivity of the building, without having to be able to ramp some of that stuff and then to maintain the current driveway as is. So we don't want to push the driveway or try to relocate the driveway in any fashion and ask for that to be pushed closer to Highway 20 at all. So we're maintaining basically that last driveway location as is, where it is, and then trying to maintain our accessible slope up to the building from that standpoint.
All right, thank you. We have a motion and a second. We've heard a lot of comments.
Can Toby from Worth make any comments?
Yeah, so I had a request that, wondering if you would open up the public hearing again. There were,
Mr. Chair, we have a motion. I'd like to vote.
I think we're kind of talking in circles. I think at this point, I think we will just do the vote. Brandy, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
okay. Case,
Yes.
Ford,
No,
Hanson,
Yes.
Cohane,
Yes.
Brink,
Yes.
Valetsky,
Yes.
Dargis Johnson.
Yes.
6 yeses, 1 no. Variance is approved. Item 6 on the agenda is open public comment. Was there anything not on the agenda that someone from the public wishes to speak about? Seeing none, item 7 is new business. Do we have any?
None that I have.
I don't have any. Item 8 is old business. Any old business?
Nope.
Nope. All right, 9 is motion to adjourn. Can I get a motion and a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. We will start the planning commission in just a couple minutes.